2024. If you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I want to give notice of an executive session that just occurred to discuss some legal issues and personnel issues. Next on the agenda, I gleefully want to acknowledge the Radnor Township Shade Tree Commission. It's one of 22 statewide recipients to be honored by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection with the 2024 Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence. Interim Acting Secretary Jessica Shirley stated that the honorees showcase the innovative ways in which we can protect our environment and shape a more sustainable future here in Pennsylvania. The Shade Tree Commission is being recognized for the Bare Root Tree Plantings project that facilitated the planting of over 230 shade trees last year alone. Members of the Shade Tree Commission will be honored at the Governor's Award ceremony tomorrow, April 30th in Harrisburg. And congratulations to Commission Chair Seth Reeser and to all the members of the committee. Job well done. Next on our agenda is of a similar vein. It's the recognition of Radnor Township as a Tree City USA for 2023. Radnor Township was named a 2023 Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation to honor its commitment to effective urban forest management. Radnor Township achieved Tree City USA recognition by meeting the program's 4 requirements: maintaining a tree board or department, having a tree care ordinance, dedicating an annual community forestry budget of at least $2 per capita, and hosting an Arbor Day observance and proclamation. The Tree City USA program is sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters. Tree City USA communities see the positive effects of an urban forest firsthand, said Dan Lamb, Chief Executive of the Arbor Day Foundation. The trees being planted and cared for by Radnor Township are ensuring that generations to come will enjoy a better quality of life. Additionally, participation in this program brings residents together and creates a sense of civic pride, whether it's through volunteer engagement or public education. If ever there was a time for trees, now is that time. Communities worldwide are facing issues with air quality, water resources, personal health and well-being, energy use, and the extreme heat and flooding. Radnor Township is doing its part to address these challenges for residents both now and in the future. So I appreciate the acknowledgement that we are continue to be a Tree City USA, and the wonderful work done by the Shade Tree Commission, and also the Parks and Recreation Department for the wonderful Arbor Day celebration that took place last Friday. Thanks. All right. Now we'll go on to public participation. If any member of the community wants to speak to any issue, you're welcome for 5 minutes.
Hi, Seth Reeser, Chair of the Shade Tree Commission. I would just like to thank the Board of Commissioners, the staff, our residents, community members, and all of the great volunteer partners that we have. Couldn't have done the great work without you guys. It really does take a village. And we're on track to plant 750 trees this year. And it's great to see, as you're driving around the township, all of the new trees that have been planted. It's a really great sight to see. So we'll be honored to accept the Governor's Award tomorrow evening. And I'm sure we'll share some pictures and congratulations with everyone. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You let out the number we can all guess now at the next festival, how many trees you're going to plant this year. Exactly. No, you didn't, but we got the ballpark. Any further public participation? Seeing none, There's always time to participate during each agenda item as it comes up. Up next is the consent agenda. Is there any item any commissioner would like to pull from the consent agenda?
H.
H? Any other item? All right, we'll start with item H.
Can the public make an exception?
Can the public
Public ask for discussion.
for a discussion of an issue? I believe so. Peter?
Yes.
Yes.
Item G.
G.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, then we'll start with item G. Resolution 2024-58, authorizing the payment to Rockwell Associates LLC for a Level 1 park risk tree inspection in 14 parks at a cost of $13,382.50. Who wants to start me out on this one?
Madam
Mr. Foster.
Yes. Thank you. Back in January of 2024, we contacted Rockwell and Associates, the Township arborist firm, to assess all the trees in the parks and the trails. And there were 14 that were assessed. And the reason why it was only 14 was because some of the other parks have already been maintained by tree work. For instance, the Radnor Bike Trail and also Hartford Park, just to give an example. So those remaining parks that were left were assessed, and we received that report in February of 2024. So this $13,000 that you see in front of you is the payment for Rockwell Associates for that report that we received.
Thank you. I realize I didn't get a motion. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Any commissioner questions or comments? Commissioner Abel.
Yeah, so just to get this straight, so the work has already been done, and now we're approving the payment?
Yes. Yes, it was just a report. So we didn't do any tree work. We just got the report to let us know the findings.
But why aren't we doing it the flip that around? Why don't we approve the report so that we're approving the payment?
Well, the report is what we're paying for. So after that, we had to get a plan for how we're going to move forward with that report.
Right, but did the board approve the report?
No, we went before Shade Tree. We let them know that we were having an assessment done. Usually we don't go before the board when we get the parks and the trees assessed.
But it is a $13,000 cost. I mean, this board, I feel, should be approving that cost before before the township goes out and authorizes a report. Like, what if we were to turn it down? Now you've got a report that has no funding behind it. So are we not to pay Rockwell?
Mr. White, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so the commissioner raises a good point. I think we'll need to go back and check to see if this was in front of the board for approval. Typically, that's how it's done. In this case, I think when it comes to evaluating trees and parks, it's one of those deals where we're not really sure what we're biting off when we send the arborist in there. So it may have been one that we authorized, and then as is typically the case, the more trees they look at, the higher the price goes up in terms of evaluating them, and we ended up at $13,000 at the end of the day. So if we missed that step, which again, we'll check and get back to the board on, but that's not normally how it's done. Normally, we would come to the board first for whatever the scope of the project is, get the authorization, and then move forward with that engagement. But we'll check on that. If we got that backwards, then we'll fix that going forward for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue in this instance, because I think it's a necessary process to follow. But it also kind of ties our hands at the moment. Like, we've got a report that has been done, so someone's done the work. So, like, I mean, how do we not pay him?
Yeah, the point's well taken. One thing I just wanted to circle back on is to make sure we didn't have it at a consent agenda 6 months ago, and we just kind of lost track of time while the actual work's been done.
If I may, it seems like it's about $1,000 a park. Is that kind of how it usually is?
No, there
A little
isn't.
bit under $1,000 a
Yeah,
park.
I'll let Ricky dive into the details there. I don't, just intuitively, I don't think it would work that way, just given the scope of each of the parks and their unique setup and their, the trees that exist.
And my
each
point in
one.
asking that is if that's kind of how it works, then we know going forward that it's going to be, we're going to have them look at 10 parks, so it's going to be about $10,000, that we kind of know ahead of time. So, but if it's not, that's not how it averages out.
Yeah, it's
Even though
never
that
from
is how
the,
it averages out.
from the bids that we've had done before for the parks, it's never been something of this magnitude. But we've also did some areas where we haven't ventured into before. But I do apologize for not having an estimate of this before we ventured into it.
Okay, no worries.
I have a quick question.
Yes, James?
Hey, Ricky, do you think you could just tell everyone here a little bit about the process? I know that the report we got in February, it's going back to the Shade Tree Commission, then it's going to come here and be reviewed. Could you just kind of speak a little bit about the kind of steps that are next in line?
Bill, do you mind? Okay. We had met twice internally with staff after we received the report. So the plan that we came up with was we'll bring it to the commissioners, the Board of Commissioners, to approve us moving forward with it, just to say, hey, we can move forward. After we get the BOC's approval, then we'll go to Shade Tree and we'll introduce it to them. So we'll be having I'm forgetting the word, drawing a blank, basically a presentation that'll show everything that was found and a way that we're going to be able to just remedy the situation. Because of the magnitude of trees, we've never taken on something of this magnitude, so we need to do it in steps. So we have to present all of that to you, and then we'll go to Shade Tree, if you give us the blessing to do so. And then after Shade Tree also gives us their blessing or any recommendations, then we'll come back to you for approval to move forward to bid.
Thanks, Ricky. And then will we get a copy of the report too, with the presentation?
Is it, I think, May 13th? Sometime, one of those meetings in May, we'll have it ready for the presentation.
Great. Thanks, bud.
You're welcome.
Just one last follow-up. So is the report directly tied to the markings on the trees?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we know what those markings mean yet?
Yes. Yes,
So-
we do.
So purple,
Yes, purple, one line means pruning, if I'm not mistaken, and then two lines mean removal.
okay. Thank you.
Any further comment? Any public comment?
Good evening, Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue. I have absolutely no objection to how much you're going to pay John Hosback for doing this. I'm concerned with the process. This is the first time tonight we have heard that one stripe is pruning and two stripes is removal. All of this is without resident input, resident knowledge. I'm not the only person who is upset, who has been looking at these trees and wondering what is going on. And this at a time when, to quote one of the statements that you just made, if ever there was a time, and I added, and it's planting time, it is now that we must protect our trees. I acknowledge we live in an old township. We have old trees. We have many, many ash. There's just no question the ash should go. But I think we need to look at how we're taking these trees, pruning them, mostly the removal. And I'm going to use a specific instance, Emlyn to Nellfield. We have very few trees. We have no shade. The only shade we have in the walking circle, it's not a trail, it's a circle, is that come about June, you walk in the shade on the east side, back and forth, because you do not want to get in the sun on the western side towards Garrett Avenue. It is too hot. You have little kids coming there for baseball games. They're all playing down at the bottom end of the field. That needs to be taken into consideration. You take out our shade, you've really ruined an area, and I am not the only Garrett Avenue person who's concerned about this. So I feel like this process has been truncated, and I have tried to ask politely, and I have been blasted for asking the question. And I just think we need to be more open and more transparent. and we need to involve the people who use these parks. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, I have a motion and a second on the table, so we're going to go ahead and vote on this, if everybody's fine with that.
On the whole consent agenda?
No, on item G, rather than motion to table. Yeah. Okay, so could I have a vote? All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. All right. Item H, which Commissioner Abel asked to be taken off, is a motion to reject the bids received for the Conestoga Road / South Devon Avenue and Sproul Road / Clyde Road intersections pedestrian improvement project, which is contract B-23-010, due to a lack of a current funding source. Do I have a motion? So moved. And a second. Okay, who wants to start us out on this? Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. So we had noted this at each step along the process, the design, the bidding, that a funding source would have to be found for this for both these projects to move forward. We did receive bids, and no funding source has come forward. So at this point, we need to reject these bids. We do have a timeline that's in our own bid package. And from there, once a funding source is found, our plans and specs packages are all still valid. We could then rebid, but we're at the point in the bidding process where we need either award or reject. And the lowest responsible bidder was actually RoadCon in the amount of $268,000 and change, considerably above the budget amount or the estimated probable cost of construction, but that's really not part of it. The reason we're asking to reject the bids is because we don't have the funding and we're within that timeline in the bid package to do so. I would like to add, though, there is an ARLI grant that's out, and we have contracted with Gilmore to prepare the ARLI grant application. So the first step in that is a scoping meeting where you meet with the grant agency and they tell you, we talk about the project, we put forth all its values and great items, and they tell you the viability of getting a grant, right? They let you know unofficially, hey, you're on the right track, or maybe this at another time. So we are doing that. Really, it will focus around the Conestoga South Devon project because PennDOT has been after us for some time to evaluate the entire intersection of Sproul and Clyde. And they may, and I'm just putting this out there, may tie that in with the Ithan Elementary School project that comes forth. So the real meeting will be about South Devon and Conestoga and how we can move forward with a strong grant application for that project.
Thank you. Mr. Abel?
Steve, I appreciate that summary and just a little bit of background. Since I came on board, I don't know, 6+ years ago, this intersection has been identified as the most dangerous in West Wayne, and so that impacts not only the 6th Ward, but Mr. Larkin represented that neighborhood for many years, and now it's been moved over to the 3rd Ward. So it touches a number of our areas. And roughly 4 weeks ago, I was driving up South Devon, approaching Conestoga, and 2 elementary students were approaching the corner, and you could tell they were trying to cross, and they were picking their opportunity to cross the road in between traffic flying off of Lancaster or coming around from West Wayne. So it's an issue that needs to be addressed. Early on, it was PennDOT that was a hurdle that we needed to overcome. They gave the green light. Then we had to get the neighbor's permission on the corner, which owns the apartments. They approved. I mean, tomorrow he could say, no, I'm not going to give you permission to use our land. So, I mean, the conditions are right now for us to act. I understand there's no funding source. You know, I was hoping that we could look at leveraging the traffic adaptation funds, which I didn't think were going anywhere, but now I'm told that that project may move forward. You know, just thinking off the top of my head, there's two other sources that, you know, I would lean toward my colleagues to considering. You know, we could borrow from the money set aside for the Willows, because they came here last year and said that they didn't expect to be before the board for any projects this year, and then put that back in. We could look at using the reserve fund. You know, we used the reserve fund last year when the police department came in and said we need 3 officers, and that was approved by this board. And Steve, what are we ballparking for this project?
I'm sorry. So the lowest responsible bid was $268,422.
But that was for the bundled.
Correct.
So, I mean, if you're separating them, the South Devon.
I'm searching for that as we speak.
Okay, so it's under 200,000, I would assess, project. You know, Bill, if we were to take 200,000 from the reserve, does that still keep us above that number that we try to, you know, whatever that percentage is?
The fund balance policy,
Yeah.
as we sit here right now, I don't have that information.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not a discussion for tonight, because, or it can be a discussion for tonight, we're not going to act on it tonight because it's not in the agenda, but something that I would ask, you know, my 6 colleagues to consider. Can we find a way to get this project done? Yeah, I don't want to put that worst-case scenario out, but I've seen it firsthand, and it's not an intersection I want my kids crossing without proper lighting and signaling.
Let me just say, so when I was an interim in 2021, this was brought up. I'm all in favor of it happening, so whatever we have to do to make it happen. It is a dangerous intersection. And we've talked about this, but I'm going to bring it up that, let's say we, the staff, but 3 years ago, in my recollection, it was not a safe place to have a crossing regardless. So apparently that has changed, or PennDOT has decided that it is, and I'm not sure what PennDOT's looking at that makes it safe regardless. And so, Steve, we've talked about that, and I don't know if you've looked at it in the meantime from when we've talked about it, but I'm curious as to what's changed.
So, Commissioner, as we discussed, I don't recall the conversation. So first off, one of the big concerns whenever we bring up for a crosswalk is a mid-block crosswalk. This is not a mid-block crosswalk because South Devon intersects Conestoga. So that takes that off the table. The RRFB, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, and the associated signage. So again, we went through PennDOT, we looked at it, our consultant went through, we made application to PennDOT, we did obtain the easements. So this meets the PennDOT requirements. As I told you, I don't recall that conversation, but
Well, I had so few that I do recall it. And
so what I can tell you is if the pedestrians use the signal properly and the motorists follow the signage and the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, it's safe, but everybody has to do their part. And that's on any crosswalk we have anywhere in the township or the country. As long as people obey the rules, the signage, the flashing, and the pedestrians use it accordingly, that's good.
What's the, from where South Devon is to the, you know, that curve when they come around, they kind of come around that right off of Lancaster Avenue, pretty, you know, they come off pretty fast and they come around, and there was an issue then, which has not changed, I assume, about the, how far someone had to see and look to notice that people were crossing, and where the sign would be if they'd pay attention.
We did look at the sight distance out there. That was part of the application process with
Yeah.
PennDOT to make sure that pedestrians will have enough visibility to be able to see cars approaching and cars can see pedestrians approaching. So that was part of the permitting process.
So it was decided that it was fine.
Yes.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Coates?
I have one question about, you said lowest responsible bid. What does responsible mean in this case?
So we have, in our bids that go out, we have a very detailed list of criteria which the bidder must provide, and we also have a responsible contract ordinance, which is very, very detailed as to what's required. So the two lower contractor, the two apparent, we call it apparent low bidder when they first come out, Premier and Marino, did not meet those requirements. And that's why the lowest responsible bidder would be RoadCon at a considerably higher $268,000.
And so just to follow up, so what would be our process then if we wanted to evaluate the split of the project and then look for funding sources and things like that? How could we go through the process of reevaluating that? And then secondly, when you look at the two, I agree, that's probably that's where you really need the support, but in other areas of the township, there are streets that could also use some more support. So then how would we create like a list then of those that need to be evaluated overall for a potential new crosswalk or things like that?
So I think one of the first steps is to bring forth these items to staff traffic. That is one method. But the manager and I have spoke very briefly and informally. So if there is a list, let's say there's all sorts of crosswalks that people are wanted, how do we prioritize them from John resident, I really, really want this, when maybe on the list it falls in priority or shouldn't even exist? We talked about those mid-block crosswalks, right? So the current process is it's usually brought from a resident to a commissioner and to staff, and we evaluate it and move forth from there, unless it's that mid-block crosswalk. But one of the first steps is a good recommendation on my part is to bring it to staff traffic through Sergeant Anthony Radico, and then all the folks that do this regularly look at it, and before it moves on, we might reply back to the commissioner, this is not necessarily a good idea because of X, Y, Z.
Any further commissioner comment or questions? Commissioner Rob?
Sorry, on the same thing, Steve, do we do pedestrian studies, just like we do, car traffic studies or whatever, crossings?
Yes. I mean, we can. I mean, so that's a big question. Do we do pedestrian studies? We have, and yes, we can. It depends on what the ask is, or if, we're talking about with the comp plan, walkability, pedestrian safety, and you can do a pedestrian. There was one done at Villanova way back when they were in for land development. How many pedestrians were there? Where did they go? And that is something that is probably a little better metric for deciding, but our folks know too, right? It's not a bad thing to come forth that way and say, hey, we have concern about a crosswalk in a certain area. Some are rather simple, especially if they're on township roads. It's on these very busy roads that are state roads that it's a very different process.
Oh, go ahead.
Just, one comment about a study. I think maybe a data point that would come out of a study is how many more people would actually use that intersection to cross if it's safer. I mean, how many parents like me are saying to your kids, you can't go to that intersection because of the current conditions? So if we want to promote walkability and more pedestrian use, we would look for ways to get, not only that intersection properly signed and signaled, but other ones as well.
The South Devon hits a couple of marks. We know people want to use it, and it's a busy state road, but it also connects South Devon on the way to Wayne.
All right, any further commissioner comment? Any public comment? All right, I'm going to call a vote on this one. All in favor? Aye. Are you in favor? Got it. The remainder of the consent agenda, items A through F and item I. Could I have a motion? So moved. And a second? Second. Any commissioner comment or anything? No, I mean, you didn't pull it. So a vote, all in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Moving on to the business agenda. Item A is a caucus, preliminary/final land development plan for 12 to 14 Ferriston Road, subdivision of one lot into two. Come on up, just tell us who you are and try to speak into the mic because of the YouTube audience.
No problem, been here before. My name is Michael Wagner. I'm a landscape architect, land planner with Hal Engineering. And tonight we're here to get final approval for our subdivision. We've been here several times, as you know, not only in the PC but also the board, to move the project forward. One of the last times I was here, one of the requirements or one of the requests was that we add additional sidewalk and fix the issue, which wasn't in this township but in a different township, which we went ahead and did as part of one of the requirements for final approval. But tonight I'm here because I just have a question which was brought up during our review, and we have a review letter from Gilmore and Associates, and the only issue that I have outstanding is we have two comments that kind of contradict themselves. Under D, general transportation comments, we have an ADA ramp over 6.25% may have a maximum length of 30 feet. If over 30 feet, a level resting area landing is to be provided. 6 is where the sidewalk runs adjacent to Radnor Road and the proposed sidewalk slope is equal to or less than the existing road slope, provide both the sidewalk and a roadway slopes to demonstrate ADA compliance. Well, the issue with that is we did comply with following the sidewalk where the original sidewalk was along the road. We've widened it, we've done what we've asked for, but now we're being asked to put in a rest stop on a sloped area, which would then increase the sidewalk after that rest area to above 7%. So what we're asking for is just some direction and also maybe some help in letting us just use the plan that we have now, because it complies with what we've already agreed to when I was here about 2 months ago. So what we're really asking for is not have to put the rest area in on that sloped area that runs along Radnor Road there. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. And that would be this area here. So we've added all the spot elevations that they required. We've added the slopes on there. We added the sidewalk. We fixed the issue that was up here where the old steps were to make that compliant. So what we're really asking for is not so much relief, but just, hey, you know what? You guys done what we asked you to do. You don't need to put the rest area in.
So depending on the pleasure of the board, I may have a solution for you. By way of stepping back for a moment, Ferriston, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but Ferriston is a loop road that goes off of Radnor Street Road. It does not connect to anywhere. It doesn't go to anywhere.
Correct.
I usually say things like I've heard from a lot of residents, meaning like I've heard from somewhere between 5 and 10, and then you kind of multiply that because you figure not everybody's going to actually reach out and talk to you about something. I think I've literally heard from every single resident of Ferriston Road, and I think that Steve Norsini's probably heard from a lot of them too. They desperately do not want a sidewalk there at all.
Well, that is the sidewalk that is running along Ferriston.
Correct.
I'm more concerned about what's happening with Radnor Road. This is where this comment comes into play.
Understood. My question to you is going to be, if the board were to grant a waiver from the requirement to install a sidewalk along Ferriston Road, would that solve your problem with respect to the 7%?
No, because that's not the issue. The issue is running up Radnor Road. Ferriston is not the issue. It's the slope going up Radnor Road from Ferriston up to the township line. That's where the rest area was being required. Ferriston, the sidewalk for Ferriston, that's another issue, and we have several residents here who have, would like to speak about that also, even though we have it on our plans, and as you had just mentioned, they are not inclined to want that.
Could I ask the board whether, this is not going to solve your problem, I hope that I could kill two birds, but does the board have the appetite to allow them to delete the road, the sidewalk along Ferriston Road?
So I don't really know the background, why was it included to begin with?
So we have a general requirement that whenever you build, you're required to put in sidewalks. The nice thing about that is that they do link up eventually, and you can have a more walkable town. Ferriston has a couple of different problems. The first is, like a lot of areas in this piece of the township, you get a lot of ponding and flooding, and so adding additional impervious cover is not really well received by the residents in that area. There's aesthetic concerns where they don't want a sidewalk to nowhere, and frankly, I would normally say tough luck. This is the rule. I like sidewalks. But Ferriston doesn't go anywhere. Nobody walks along Ferriston in order to get to downtown Wayne, except for the residents of Ferriston. And if they all don't want the sidewalk, then I'm inclined to say, we're not going to make you put it in. I very much want the sidewalk along Radnor Street Road, because that actually is a way to get to downtown Wayne. But the
And
same
we're
is
not
not true of
disputing
Ferriston.
that.
Understood, yeah.
Well, we can't be
Rest
talking
area-
about-
Wait, well, you can come up during public participation if you want, but otherwise you can't do a question and answer back and forth.
I don't.
Would you like me to answer that for that gentleman?
I'll ask it. What's a rest area?
A rest area is basically an area that is a flat level area where after you, if you are in a wheelchair, you move your 30 feet, but it gives you a place to rest without having to slide backwards. Correct.
So it's a flat
It's
area
correct,
that's
correct.
staged
It's just a
between
flat
two
area.
sloping
Correct,
areas?
Correct.
So I'm just going to answer Jack's question. I mean, I don't have I'm not going to hold up the project over the sidewalk if the neighbors don't want it. What gives me some reluctance is, 20 years from now, there could be a neighborhood that says, we really want sidewalks, and now the township's going to be paying for it when we would have already started the process.
Well, I'd like to hear from the public that is here before I decide on any of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like, it's a caucus, so we don't do public comment.
Well, before we move with the public comment, could I get some feedback on the rest location off of Radnor Road? Is that something that we can just not do?
Can I
And can-
interject? I think there's some confusion on the rest area, and I'm going to let Mr. Drummond speak to that.
So the rest area is required by ADA in certain conditions. If your roadway is within the right-of-way and and you have ramps or anything that's over 5% is considered a ramp, you are allowed to follow the slope of the road under right-of-way conditions. So in this case, although we tried to put a rest area where we do have slopes over that, if we're coming off a ramp, in this case, it may not be required. We can talk between our offices to try to clarify that and make sure that we're still meeting ADA compliance. That's the one thing that we're looking at, is just to make sure we meet ADA compliance here.
Okay.
I agree with that 100%. I don't think there's any way around the ADA compliance rules, so this is a good solution if you can work together to work that
We'll
out.
be more than happy to. Thank you.
Great. Any commissioner comments or questions other than that? No? Go ahead.
I'd just be grateful. I know this is caucus, you're getting some direction from us. I'd be grateful if you could let us see the plans without the sidewalk when you come back for your preliminary.
Well, we already have preliminary approval.
No, you're here for preliminary final. You
excuse
do
me,
not have
yes,
any
from the
approvals at
PC.
this time.
Yeah, isn't this caucus?
Correct. This is caucus preliminary final. The applicant has no approvals other than a recommendation from Planning Commission. They have no Board of Commissioners approvals.
Got it. So we're not voting tonight. They got to come back, right?
No, sir. You're correct, sir. This is caucus.
Stop clock right twice a day.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? No questions? All right, thank you very much. We'll see you at the next meeting, presumably.
So just to get this correct, you want me to remove the sidewalk along Ferriston and then come back for preliminary final approval, is that
If
correct?
we could see that, yes, please.
Okay.
Commissioners, I do have one question for the applicant. So currently on the one lot that's built, the driveway, the circular drive, the entranceway is paved out into the street. So our ordinance requires curbing. How are you going to address curbing, which will literally cut through those driveways? You're going to have to go back further into those driveways to blend that in. I just want to make sure we're on the same
Correct,
page.
that's exactly what will have to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, item B. Oh, not on a caucus. So what I would recommend is, sorry about this one. No, wait, if you, there will be a general public participation at the end of the meeting in which you can come up and talk about anything. And, you know, there aren't that many items between now and then, hopefully. I'm sorry, that's the way it goes. Item B, discussion and direction for dogs in park enforcement. Mr. White, you want to start us off on this one?
Thank you, Madam President. What we're hoping for tonight is following up on Ordinance 2024-01, which was adopted back on February 26th, earlier this year, after a lengthy public review process that went through the Parks Board and then ultimately to the commissioners. The 30-day adoption period expired on March 25th, so now Ordinance 2024-01 is in full force and effect. During those discussions, and part of what the Parks Board also recommended that I want to just take a quick second and touch on, included other elements other than just the times at which dogs were allowed to be leashed or unleashed at Skunk Hollow. Those included, here's the exact language from the recommendation, was placing additional signage and infrastructure necessary to inform the public that the Willows Park is a dog-free park, of any rules regarding dogs in Skunk Hollow Park, and appropriate etiquette for having dogs in Skunk Hollow Park. To that end, the following has been completed. A new post and rail fence has been installed in the area between the Willows Park parking lot and the trail entrances to Skunk Hollow, which adds a physical barrier that prevent dogs from getting down towards the Willows Mansion. And along that fence, signs have been posted that indicate no dogs beyond this point, no dogs permitted in the Willows Park. At the same time, Ordinance 2024-01 has been enlarged and posted at the kiosk at Skunk Hollow Park for everyone to see there. Tammy continues to work on some additional signage that includes signage making it clearer that dogs must be on a leash until you enter the trail, the space between the Willows Park parking lot and the trail entrance up at the wood line. And then as well as some updated information on the Skunk Hollow Park kiosk that outlines or updates the user's guidelines along with the dog etiquette, which was part of the Parks Board recommendation. So that brings us to where we are tonight. So we recognize that enforcement matters are not typically brought to the Board of Commissioners for discussion. We're certainly not trying to set precedent tonight. Instead, we're hoping that this discussion will bring some transparency and meet the board's, or to make sure that we're meeting the board's expectations. Since this matter is a bit more complicated based on several unique characteristics. And I think I'm stating some of the obvious, but just to be clear, some of those characteristics include the fact that we're fortunate enough to have three amazing parks that are all right next to each other. So for those folks that may not be familiar with the area, they may not be entirely sure as to which park they're actually at, between the Willows, Skunk Hollow, and Sawmill. At the same time, at the Willows property, we have the mansion that we've leased out to Willows Park Preserve, and they hold events regularly, which often makes it difficult when dogs are nearby and around. This type of dog regulation with the times is a new concept. And as we learned through the public discussion process, through Parks Board and including the public discussion that the board had leading up to the adoption, this is obviously an issue that hits home to a lot of people on both sides of the issue, and they both feel very strongly about their positions. So we want to be sensitive to that by making sure we have a public discussion about the enforcement going forward. At the same time, since the adoption, we are aware of non-compliance over at Skunk Hollow with the new dog ordinance. This non-compliance has been witnessed by township staff, and we do continue to get some informal reporting through emails, which, as we talked extensively about during the adoption, those are difficult to react to. So ultimately, we understand that the enforcement is going to fall to the Radnor Police Department. As such, we've asked them to develop an enforcement program that Chief Flanagan will step through here momentarily. But before I hand it off to Chris, the good news, I think, in this situation is that Radnor is fortunate to have the best police department when it comes to promoting themselves and doing their job with the highest amount of professionalism and empathy towards the situation. So as we have this conversation, as this situation matures going forward, the professionalism of our police department gives me and hopefully the board and the community a lot of confidence that we'll do this the right way, understanding that there is some enforcement necessary, but it'll be done so in the most professional manner possible. So with that, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, please provide the outline.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Board. Radnor Police, we would like to go forward with a 2-week warning process where we put officers in the park, not just at the parking lot locations, but moving throughout the park area to meet and greet our community. And if warranted, they would receive a warning notice or an information notice, depending on what they're doing or what's going on. And then following that 2 weeks, which really the clock would start tonight, for the 2 weeks, then enforcement would start based on the ordinance 115-7, which if they are in violation of the different aspects, there's a couple different pieces. I'm not going to reread it unless the commissioners want clarification. We would then issue citations for that, and that is a township ordinance violation under section 115-7 or a related number based on what the animal had done or was not under control. The citation, you could plead guilty and just pay it. There's no criminal record. It is a non-traffic citation through our township ordinance, or the subject would have the ability to plead not guilty and go before our judge to get an end result should they want to make a point of something after the officer's observation.
Hey, Chief, what's the amount of that citation?
Commissioner, when we have an ordinance violation, the judge assigns the charge, but per our ordinance, it is $300 to $1,000 fine plus costs.
And do those stay the same for multiple infractions? Say you see the same person every Saturday afternoon.
The good thing is, ma'am, is that the judge picks it. It is completely up to the magistrate. They assign the cost. If it's 5 tickets, it's up to them how they do it. So that's basically it. One of the things that we do want to try and do, and I will highlight Mr. White's comments, that we really are hoping to get a tracking system. Some of the commissioners during this process asked very legitimate questions about how many incidents we had and other things, and the more people who actually use the 911 or the police reporting system will help us get the most amount of accurate data. We also believe that after a little bit of our interactions with some of the people who are in not following the rules, if you will. We're hoping that that will change up, and it will highlight maybe a very small group of people who are just not doing it, and then we can have discussions about them repeatedly offending. But the judge, just to answer your question, the judge picks regardless if it's 1 ticket or 7.
Thank you. Did you have another question?
No, I think I interrupted the chief's presentation, so apologies, and continue if there's more.
I hope I answered everybody's questions.
Any other commissioner questions?
Just one question. So are these officers going to go down into the trail or just be out in the parking lot for visibility, given that most of the off-leash activity happens on the trail, not actually in the parking lot?
My goal is to have them out in the trail where some of these things are occurring as well. I don't have a number to say, 50% are in the parking lot, 50% are, sort of off in the trail mix, but we want to show that we're paying attention. We're out here. The commissioners have set the rules for the park. It has been publicly done. Director Cohen has put it out numerous times to a very large email list and social media list. So we have extended the best we can. It's now time, if you guys direct us, to go ahead and take this step.
Chief, with the folks you're planning to put in the park, is this normal duty time or is this overtime?
It would be, depending on when it is, the weekends would probably be extra duty details, and then during the week would be regular officers. We have more staff during the Monday through Friday with our highway patrol and other things.
Okay. I didn't support this when it came up for a vote. It's neither here nor there. I hate the fact that we're going to be spending police resources on manning a park where we've heard from neighbors and the chief from you as well that we are stretched thin. We have a lot of other issues that are high priorities, and I just think this enforcement mechanism is going to be very difficult, after your preliminary period when you're out there. I don't know how Radnor Police is going to respond, receive the call, respond, and find if somebody's there without a dog within that time frame. I just don't see it happening. But I'm going to step off that issue and really focus on the other parks where we have signs already that say no dogs allowed. So is the plan now to enforce those signs in all the other parks throughout the township?
So there's a couple different, two different things with that. First of all, if there is a call and a complaint for a dog at a park that's not allowed to have dogs at it, the police will respond and issue citations accordingly. One other thing that we're talking internally on is going through the combination of ordinances and policies in an effort to try to clean up and make it a little bit clearer which parks dogs are allowed, which parks are not. And when I say clear, I mean ordained, so something that is front-facing in our code book, just like the Skunk Hollow ordinance that was adopted. That is something that we're working on internally. That's going to take a few months to get us through the process at best, but that is in the works as well.
So Bill, on that comment, the no dog signs in the park, is that attached to an ordinance, or is that a policy that some previous board approved? Like where can you point in our books to say, here's where it was passed, as you would for the Skunk Hollow?
Yeah, so it's the latter. There's nothing in the Radnor Township Code that specifically dictates which parks dogs are allowed and not allowed.
So if you have a dog,
other than Skunk Hollow now.
So if you have a dog at a park that says no dogs, and the police show up, what are you finding them?
So the code does allow for the township to set policy and enforce based on that. So that citation would be based on policy set by the township with
Which would be what?
That there are certain parks that have been identified where parks are allowed, or dogs are allowed, and others where they're not.
Oh, so my question is, so if somebody was at a park that says no dogs, and the police showed up, what is the citation? Like, what are they being fined?
For violation of township policy.
What's the monetary amount?
No, can I?
Please?
Okay. Yeah, it's under Chapter 205. It states that pets may accompany owners when under control unless specifically prohibited and posted by the township. So if they're somewhere, if they're not complying with the postings, then they're in violation of Chapter 205. Chapter 205 puts the penalty up to $600.
Okay. So I'm gonna look to my colleagues up on the dais, and I'll just give you one example. In West Wayne, we have Ditmar Park. It has a paved circular path around the park. In the neighborhoods, there are no sidewalks. So, there are multiple times during the day where schools are, buses are coming, buses are leaving, parents are dropping their kids off or they're picking them up, and the streets are packed. The safest place for neighbors to walk their dogs is Ditmar Park around that path. One, you're away from the traffic. Two, you can be a safe distance if there are other dog walkers. My request is that while the township is doing this study, can we ask for a moratorium on fining residents who have been using parks, and I'll say Ditmar Park, for years, and I went back and checked in the last 5 years. I think there's one call to the police department, no incidents. So, yeah. So again, the request is that while the township's doing the study, can we ask that no citations be given to neighbors who have chosen to use the parks primarily for safety reasons?
So I have a couple of questions. Number one, Mr. White, I believe that what we're talking about now is purely Skunk Hollow and not the other parks. Is that correct? The enforcement piece of it?
Yes, so for tonight's discussion, the intention was to cover Skunk Hollow because that's the new element to this conversation.
Yeah, but you can't have, it's not happening, it's not happening in a vacuum. So you're having a conversation about enforcing the policy at Skunk Hollow. You can't say we're going to enforce the policy at Skunk Hollow and then ignore the policy at every other park. So I'm saying instead of go ahead and enforce the ordinance at Skunk Hollow, but you are looking at the other parks until we make a decision on the other parks, can we not cite residents who are walking dogs in those parks?
I don't think that was brought up. I think that this plan was purely for the Skunk Hollow on-leash, off-leash issue, not for the no dogs in particular parks. I would make the case that if you think Ditmar is a good candidate for dogs, that you make that as the case and not the enforcement arm of it. Like if you think that dogs should be allowed in Ditmar, that might be something we could talk about.
No, I think, about one, I am saying that is the position I would have, but I'm going to let the township run their study, come back with their recommendations, read their recommendations, and present.
I'm not sure what the study.
So, Bill, my understanding is you guys are going to look at the other parks that don't allow dogs at the moment, correct?
Okay, yes. So actually, this exchange is exactly what we're hoping to resolve by going in and clarifying what is in the codes. And that is through an ordinance ordaining which parks dogs are allowed and which ones are not. So yes, that's the next step in our process. During that discussion, yeah, that would be the time to talk about if there are any changes to the existing policy that commissioners want to see made. I would anticipate this ordinance probably making its way through Parks Board first, So there might be some modifications made there before it comes to the Board of Commissioners. That's typically how these things flow through the process. But yeah, so at the end of it, the goal is to have an ordinance that spells out all the parks and what the dog rules are.
I'd like to make another comment. Chief Flanagan, the Skunk Hollow ordinance is specifically on Saturdays and Sundays. So enforcement of the change in the ordinance would only be on Saturdays and Sundays. Is that right? Or
So in reference to the leashing and the dogs at large, we are receiving complaints about people letting their dogs out in the parking lot at the Willows. Willows is listed on my list as one of the parks that there are no dogs allowed.
I hear, thanks very much for that clarification. I wasn't thinking about the parking lot to the Skunk Hollow Trails. Thank you. Any commissioner comments or questions? Do you feel like you got some direction?
Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the time tonight. One closing remark is that as this goes forward, we'll anticipate doing some township promotion on it to get the word out through our different resources. Tammy, as the chief pointed out, has an extensive list. Then we'll also use the PIO's office to help communicate this out to the public in as many ways as possible. So we appreciate the board's support.
My only other comment would be I'm not sure a 2-week period is long enough for warnings.
Well, that's part of why we want to have the conversation.
Yeah,
so.
I just feel like if you're not giving like, say I get caught speeding and they give me a warning, they would know later on that, hey, she got caught and got a warning last week, so this week I'm going to give her a ticket. And I'm not sure that you're actually doing that, or are you?
Well, and I know, Director Cohen, correct me if I'm wrong, we did our 30 days, so let's just say this was a stop sign, not such a hot issue. But when we post a new no left turn sign or a stop sign, we do not do any enforcement. We will only do warnings based on a 30-day time frame, which is based on the approval of the board, or if there's some problem sticking the sign in the ground, then we wait for the clock to start. We've waited the full 30 days, spoke with Mr. Rice's office, did want to have this discussion because there's a lot of uniqueness to this issue. And we feel that with the rail, the signs that have been posted by the Parks team, Parks and Rec team, that it is time to, I guess, close the window. So that's why we wanted to just share this information publicly. But we have taken a lot of steps to address the dog issue, heard from all the sides, and we just wanted to make sure that the board was ready for this. But I think 2 weeks is fair because really it's been a month. Signage has been posted, fences have been put up, people have had time to notify. We're going to do a blitz. I thought the 2-week notice is reasonable, but whatever you decide is good.
But if I could just jump in, and Chris, sorry for the, between you and me, but when someone is issued a warning, it is documented. So to the commissioner's question about the comparison with a stop sign or speeding, the police will have documentation of the warnings issued so that repeat offenders will be known to the department.
That's correct. So the warnings will also be tracked via information. I shouldn't say tracked. They'll be recorded. So we have documentation of somebody who has continued to disregard the rules of Radnor Township, or I shouldn't say the rules, the ordinance in place by the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And I'm also comforted by the fact that it's really 6 weeks and not, because it's already been 4 weeks. So thank you. Yeah. Commissioner Riley.
Yeah, I heard this past weekend that TE did similar to this, and it took about 6 months for everybody or the majority of the people to know about it. And I think it's a good idea what we're trying to do, because then they'll pass it along, because a lot of people do not know the rule or anything. And there's also a lot of people even from outside the township as well.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Resolution 2024-52, authorization to award construction contract B 23-013B for the Radnor Township building EV charging stations project to Hobbs and Company Incorporated to include contingency and construction inspection and administration costs in the total amount of $230,210 to be funded from the Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED, local shares account, statewide grant for EV charging stations and EV vehicles, and the Radnor Township Capital Improvement Fund. Mr. Norsini?
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm happy to say that the apparent low bidder is also the lowest responsible bidder in HOP. So that's a great thing. And so what the engineering department is specifically requesting is that the board award this to Hobbs. And the idea is to have 4 chargers installed for the police. And we're also making accommodations for 4 possible future chargers for, whether it be for police or other vehicles. So we are thinking ahead a little bit into the future within the bounds of the project. So that number does include contingency and inspection. And we respectfully request that that be awarded by the board.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Any commissioner comments or questions? No? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Item D, Resolution 2024-61, authorizing the award of construction contract B 24-001 for the 2024 Super Pave Street Resurfacing Project to Glasgow Incorporated to include contingency and construction inspection and administration in the total amount of $1,286,535.60 to be funded from the Liquid Fuels Fund. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Mr. Norsini.
So once again, I am happy to note that the apparent low bidder is the lowest responsible bidder in Glasgow. Glasgow actually won the award last year, so we respectfully request that this be awarded to Glasgow. While we're talking, everybody has in the packet the road list that will be paved. So that is our request.
Thank you. Any commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Abel.
Steve, did we make, so was it the original list or did we make the stretch list? Were the additional streets included?
Yes.
Okay. When does this start?
So this is actually a conditional approval. The responsible contractor ordinance adds a lot of time to these bids. So what I'm requesting tonight is that the Board of Commissioners award this project while that responsible contractor timeline plays out. What this gives me the opportunity to do is to get all the measuring redone with the contractor, all the submittals, their schedule, notifications, so that once they check the last box on the responsible contractor item, we can get started. So the plan is, I don't have a start date, but the finish date is the end of the summer, Labor Day. We try to do this when...
Everybody's gone.
Correct. And there's no buses.
Good. Good. I mean, do you have a ballpark? You know, are you hoping to start by June 1st?
I really can't tell you till we need tonight to have those conversations with the contractor. So they have a window of the summer, and usually these projects are about 6 work weeks. So I would anticipate a late July start.
Okay. And when do we, not we, but when are the neighbors notified of, like when streets will be worked on in their neighborhood?
So we post a schedule, and we do note on that schedule that everything is weather dependent, or as in any construction projects, things happen that may slow down the schedule or actually increase. So that is a general guideline for our residents, but the contractor, as part of the contract, is responsible to post the road. So you see little signs along the side of the road that say no parking, you know, this week.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Agnew.
Sure, Steve, oh, sorry there. So they did this work last year or the year before, whenever it was last done? You said they were the contractor before?
They were the successful bidder last year also.
And they did work last year, right?
That's correct.
And were there any issues?
No.
They restored to the previous curb level and all that? That was not a problem?
Correct.
Everything went great? Just want to make sure there weren't any issues that
I-
there
so
were,
thi-
we wouldn't.
So this was a year ago. If
Uh-huh.
there were, actually, let me say, there were some issues.
Okay.
They did not hesitate. They came back, they remilled and repaved. So we're happy. That was a requirement of their, to mitigate that. So we are happy with their work. We
And
were
how did
happy
we-
with their work last year.
How did we know that there was a problem?
We have inspectors on site.
So, and are they township employees, or this is subcontracted out?
This is a third-party inspector.
Okay.
And honestly, I'm out on site quite a bit also. And in this case, Glasgow came to us and said, oh, there's a problem here, we're going to fix it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further commissioner comment or question? Any public participation on this issue?
Madam President, I have one comment to Steve. So the board is awarding the base bid as well as the alternate bid tonight.
So the award amount in the resolution is base bid, alternate, as well as contingency and inspection. It is the whole full amount.
But the contingency inspection that's an additional cost, it's not going to the contractor.
That is correct. And so for the solicitor's benefit, we let the board know the total cost of the contract to the township, which is over and above the cost to the contractor, the cost of the contractor.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. Any public participation? Seeing none, let's call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Passed unanimously. Item E, Resolution 2024-63, authorization of the payment of change orders number 7, 8, 9, and 10 to MECO Constructors Incorporated for the pipe relocation and inlet modification on South Devon Avenue, excess boulder removal, inlet modification on West Wayne Avenue, and knotweed and debris removal at the Friends of Radnor Trails Park for the South Devon Avenue area flood reduction at the West Wayne Preserve and the Friends of Radnor Trail Park project in the total amount of $31,113,000 to be funded from the grants and the stormwater fund. Do I have a motion? And a second? Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Madam President. So this specific change order regards, just as we encountered in South Wayne and we've been encountering on this project all along, there were unmarked pipes on South Devon Avenue that required us to move the inlets. There's going to be a curb cost as well as others. On the Friends of the Radnor Trail, and most people wouldn't have seen it. I think you would have seen it from the trail, but we found a pile of debris, basically from some past construction project somewhere, concrete pipe inlets. Also, we wanted to plant that with our seed mix, our special seed mix, the lowland seed mix, and the knotweed was about 4 or 5 feet high. So that included the removal of all of that. And so far, that's there are more coming, but this is for tonight.
And that's within the contingency.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have noted that. Yes, this is well within the
Well, I'd just like to hear it,
contingency.
actually. Any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Item F is Resolution 2024-64, authorization of the payment of change order numbers 5 and 6 to R.E. Pearson Construction Company, Incorporated, for perforated pipe and under-drain installation for the replacement of the Shimoni Road culvert and retaining walls project in the total amount of $19,040.25 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund. May I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Mr. Norsini again.
Thank you, Madam President. So I will start with that these are all well within the contingency of the project, and these are all water-related. So new culverts installed, new section of road, incredible amount of water was coming through. So we had to run two pipes on a pipe on either side of the wall, as well as that would be the time to put under drain in a road, which I had them do that also. So this is specifically for perforated pipe on the outside of the channel, both sides of the walls, as well as the under drain pipe. So that runs parallel to the curb line to the inlets, which then discharge out from there. So we respectfully request this be authorized to the contractor.
Do we have any idea when the culvert will reopen to traffic?
End of May.
Awesome, thank you.
Any further commissioner comments or questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Item G, Resolution 2024-65, authorization to award the contract for the tree replacement and landscaping associated with the Shimoni Road Culvert Project to All Seasons Landscaping Corporation Incorporated in the amount of $24,720 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund. Could I have a motion, please? So moved. And a second. Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'm actually very excited about this. So we had to remove trees as part of this project. And if you were to visit the site, you will see on either side of the channel, there is an open space that's been graded. And our township arborist, John Hospak, who is always cutting edge on planting trees and all things of that sort, we kept this out of the contract so that we could do something a little more special here. So the plan designated for this is to provide a sustainable and wildlife-friendly environment. It's composed of wildlife food and people food with these trees. There's forest products, forest food for humans. So in the end, we're going to have an area that has an epidemic-proof palette, native and structural benefits, visual aesthetics, low maintenance. That's always a requirement, and that was a similar requirement to affect our Public Works group as little as possible. So what we're proposing for this, or what John has proposed and what we strongly encourage, is there's going to be 29 bald and burlap trees planted. Persimmons, which are one of the edibles, sweetbag magnolias, pawpaws, which are edible, wildfire black gums, and mixed apple trees. So there's the edible for critters and humans, and then we have 47 shrubs, smooth alders, common nine barks, and swamp rose. And then as far as the seeding, again, we want to create a natural landscape, and we also don't want to impose additional work where there was none for our Public Works group. And that would consist of native woods and floodplain seeding. So if you're wondering what that is, it's fox sedge, wild rye, switchgrass. The floodplain seeding is deeper rooted grasses, so it is right next to the pond and the creek. Although we increased the height of the walls of the channel, I was there in the last most severe storm, and everything was contained. We all know that we get more frequent and more severe storms, so if and when, and that there is just when that will occur, these plantings are also made for that, right? They're taken into consideration what they're going to be. So the total cost is $24,750. We're requesting that award be made tonight, and there is an urgency to this, because if I don't get them planted in May, the site will sit until next fall. So we would really like to get this planted. We will punch list out our contractor, and hopefully by the end of May, then everybody can drive through and we're out of everybody's hair.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? All right, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Plant away. Okay, next, that completes our business agenda. We have reports of board liaisons. Sure.
So I'm newly appointed, somewhat newly, to the Environmental Advisory Council, and it was a lively session, I have to say. Last time I was kind of taken aback, but there was a lot of interesting ideas that came up. The first, and we've talked about this, Maggie, the replacing the use of mulch in the township properties with perennials. It will, holds the soil better, all that sort of thing. And as I had pointed out before, that last summer when there was a rain, a significant rain, a lot of the mulch out of the South Wayne parking lot, the new parking lot that we spent all that money on, clogged up all the stormwater drains near the firehouse. So it couldn't really do its job as it was supposed to. So if we had moved, there was a presentation by a Mr. Sven Deathfels, something, who lives over on Chamonix in Jack's area. And so he suggested that he'd be happy to do his presentation again at the meeting on May 20th, so I'd like it to be put on the agenda. And in addition, I spoke to Susan Stern with the school board and as well as Tammy about getting the schools involved in the planting, and they thought that they were pretty enthusiastic about it. So as I said, I'd like to put that on the board meeting. The next topic was the gas-powered leaf blowers and the phasing out of them. I know that's a touchy or sensitive issue because of landscaping businesses, but it seems to be something that not only is it noise pollution, but it's the air pollution for the people who are using them, mostly the employees. And so there was some discussion, but not a lot of facts, is that Tredyffrin may be passing some sort of ordinance. And thirdly, with regard to recycling, there is a question about whether or not our things are actually being recycled. There's kind of a feeling with no facts that they're not, that they're picking the stuff up, but they're not going in some place to be recycled. So the EAC, that board would like to be appointed, if that's not the right term, but do some investigation for the board. Whatever, deputize like you, deputy there, deputy solicitor. To look into what's happening. And they'd like to be more involved with, as well as that, with the leaf blowers, and maybe look into what other townships are doing. Their belief was that only Montgomery County, Maryland had outlawed them, but I don't know, no one knew if that was a fact or not. But anyway, they would like to be more involved, and I would like to have that on the agenda for May 20th.
The
Okay.
EAC sounds pretty active. So
Well,
Mr. Foster, these all fit smartly into your realm, so if you want to get your heads together and come up with
we did
an
talk a bit.
agenda item, that
I
would
don't like
be...
to take people by surprise, so we did talk.
Good. All right. Any other board liaison?
Tammy, if you could talk about Parks and Rec, and then the Friends of Radnor Trail Park, is that open yet, or that's part of that thing that's getting fixed?
No, well, Steve can update as well, but I know the project is still underway, so I think we're eyeing probably June, July at this point for opening. And we have a group that's like an e-notification group of folks that typically have been the dog walkers over there. I know that we try to stay in communication with and provide updates to, so we certainly can give them an update once we have more of a solid date or week that we're targeting where we know we're going to be opening.
Thank you.
All right. As far as the Board of Health, there's nothing acute to present, but I did want to let people know that the 2 student interns that work with the Board of Health will be presenting at the next meeting. So that's always an interesting night. All right. Any new business? Any old business? Final public participation? Seeing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? Second. All in favor? I do.